Today's event is called Maximizing Your Career Potential and Functional Expertise, something we all aspire to do. It is sponsored by Johnson & Johnson, We STEM 2D. And I'm very excited to be joined by We STEM 2D's leaders at Johnson & Johnson, Sharon, Jennifer, and Stacey, to hear your advice on how to make strategic career moves. You all have very impressive titles and career journeys, and we can't wait to hear about it. So with that, if you don't mind introducing each of yourselves, that would be great. Stacey, do you want to go first and tell us what you do in your role at Johnson & Johnson? And perhaps share something that might not be obvious from your LinkedIn or Fairygodboss event profile, please.
Sure. Thanks, Georgine. First off, I just want to say thank you so much for having me here today. I'm excited to chat with all of you today. So I am Stacey Vakowitz, and I am a supply chain strategy support lead. So my career, I've held several STEM roles, from all the way from R&D, product development, to owning a relationship with and having accountability for a large-scale external manufacturer, to my current role, which is a leadership development role directly supporting Johnson & Johnson's Chief Global Supply Chain Officer and Executive Vice President, who also has accountability across our global network of manufacturing. So, and beyond, I'll say. It's funny, LinkedIn, I actually am probably one of the very few that actually doesn't have a LinkedIn account. So I'll just leave you with a fun fact related to STEM, that I have 2 patents out there floating in the world, I'll say.
Thanks, Stacey. I'd love to hear about what those patents are if we get a chance later in the conversation. Jennifer, Lucy, would you mind introducing yourself, please?
Sure. So thanks again for having me here today as well. This is an exciting opportunity to talk to everybody. My name is Jennifer Venable, and I am in early research and discovery at Janssen in San Diego. I am a medicinal chemist by training. I have my PhD in synthetic organic chemistry, and I've been with Janssen for 20 years. Started as a bench scientist working on early drug discovery projects, and over the past 20 years now hold my current role, which is Senior Director and Site Head of Medicinal Chemistry here at Janssen in San Diego, where we have a team of over 50 researchers, again, in early drug discovery across therapeutic areas. In terms of maybe something that's not on LinkedIn, I have a husband who's also in science and in proteomics, so a pretty science household, but I have 2 kids, 15 and 13, who are all in the arts and music and drawing and far from science. So it's a great mixed household where we discuss a lot of interesting events. So.
Love it. Sorry, I got the last names mixed up. Sharon, Lucy, could you please introduce yourself next?
That's okay. Hello, everybody. And I'm also happy to be here today with all of you. My name is Sharon Lucy. I am the Vice President of Global Commercial Quality here at J&J and Janssen. I've been within J&J for 19 years now, so a little less than Jennifer. And I've been an entire time here at J&J within quality. So I've supported quality from an R&D perspective, as well as a commercial perspective, and across 2 sectors actually within Johnson & Johnson. Most of my career has been here within Janssen, but I've also spent 5 years in the consumer space. So a different business model of products, but it was a very exciting time and lots of learning that I had during that time. Maybe a fun fact that's not in LinkedIn is that I was single for a very long time I used to say, without having a pet rock. And my husband is a neurologist. He actually headed up one of the groups within Johnson & Johnson, within Janssen, for many years. When I met him, he had 5 kids, and at the time, 3 grandkids. And since we've been married, we now have 9 grandkids. So that has, from going from a working world of just being single and being focused, to learning how to juggle a big family and also extend my career and my development. So it's been an interesting path.
Thank you for sharing that, Sharon.
Mm-hmm.
You all have summarized your careers is very extensive in a very brief period of time. And talking about ourselves and our career accomplishments can often be difficult, particularly for women. We say there's sort of like a bragging exercise we like to do at Fairygodboss to help us get comfortable with talking about our achievements, and self-promotion can be uncomfortable, but it is also very vital to career growth. So do you have any examples of when you needed to practice self-promotion in order to advance your career? Let's start with Jennifer.
Thanks, Georgine. I have a couple of examples. I'll use one of when I was a research scientist, just starting out at the bench and in projects and learning medicinal chemistry. Coming in after my PhD into a large corporate environment where folks really knew what they were doing in medicinal chemistry, and I was just on the learning stage. I did have a lot of imposter syndrome. I don't know if others, experience that, where I was afraid to ask questions. I thought I should know the answer to everything, and I was really concerned that if I asked the question, it would show that I didn't understand. But as I started to listen to the questions that were asked in the room, and as I started to have conversations outside of those rooms, everyone else had the same questions. And some of them were even asked in the meeting and started good conversations. And so I made a promise to myself that I would not leave a seminar or a meeting without asking one question. I would always ask one question. And just that simple act led me to be more comfortable with asking questions, with expressing my opinions. And later on, that became a real advancement for me, because my boss was of the mind that project leaders select themselves, and leaders select themselves by demonstrating, their knowledge. And it doesn't always have to be in the room. I mean, I know that there are extroverts and introverts, and there are different ways of communication. And so, but expressing your opinion, leading by influence, getting your knowledge out there, and your drive for what you're doing, and having that spread amongst your colleagues was really key to self-promote myself in moving into the areas that I wanted to be in. So that's one example of it as an early scientist of what I felt like I needed to do, and it's really helped me today.
I love that. So just speaking up is a form of self-promotion and making yourself heard. Sharon, do you have any examples in your career?
Yeah, again, like Jennifer, one that I can think of too is taking a step of coming out of my comfort zone, right? So, as I mentioned, I had been in quality. I started out in quality, actually in the pharmaceutical business. And I needed to make an adjustment from a family perspective into a different role. And I took a role in operations. And when I went into a clinical operations role, I didn't really know anything, just like Jennifer, right? So I was trying to learn and afraid to kind of ask the questions. And I surrounded myself with people who really knew what they were doing to help myself learn. But through that, what it helped me to do too is that when I went back into quality, was it gave me a totally different perspective on quality and how to approach things, and not to be afraid to, Jennifer's point, I think too, of not knowing something, but being able to then admit it and then find out, right? And to talk to individuals and to find out more about that and to make those connections. So that's, again, another, I think, an example of like an early start of something that I learned.
Great. And Stacey, do you have anything to add to this?
Yes, being totally transparent, I will say self-promotion is still uncomfortable for me, right? I've never been one to really talk about myself, and I've learned throughout the years to become more comfortable with being uncomfortable. I would say agreeing to be part of this panel today is a great example of that, right? So specifically in terms of examples, throughout my career, I've taken some big leaps. So for example, moving from an external company into Johnson & Johnson, completely changing my career path. So moving from research and development into a supply chain career. And in both of these instances, I really was virtually and an unknown entity to many, right, in the areas I was moving into. So I really needed to self-promote, to advocate for myself, but also really educate others on what I am capable of. And then I'll say ultimately convincing them I was the right person for the company or for the role or whatever it may have been. And I've been able now to kind of use that ongoing, right? That self-promotion has become part of my brand, I'll call it. And I continue to share my story and kind of how I've navigated my career as I meet others, as I network, as I interview for additional roles. So I continue to pull through that self-promotion throughout my career.
That's great. And we are so glad that you're on the panel, but I've never guessed that this was in any way uncomfortable. So speaking, actually, that's a great segue. You just talked about how you made a career change and were an unknown entity when you started you've left R&D. So can you tell us, why don't we start with Sharon? How did you know it was the right time for you to make the move? You talked about going into operations, during the time that your family responsibilities expanded. Is there anything more to that? Are there other factors that went into identifying sort of the next best opportunity for you?
Yeah, when you're in a role, right, for some time and you become like an expert in that role, what I learned in making that move was that you can learn even more, right? You learn even more that then helps you to take your career even further. And so I really look at it every 3 to 5 years. I kind of take a step back and say, okay, I feel like now in this role, I've really learned a lot. I feel like I am an expert, and my team or the group of individuals I'm working with are really set. Now I need to move on to something else to refresh, to actually give me more energy to learn more and to grow. So I usually look at, every 3 to 5 years, looking to advance to like a next move. And I really use my network. I've found over the years that your network is so important. And I've been so fortunate here too within Johnson & Johnson to increase my network across segments, across externally with other organizations, and then use some of those connections that I have as mentors to actually think about different opportunities that could be appropriate to move into, right? Where I could use my knowledge and it's something different that can further grow myself and I can learn. And even at my age, I feel like every day I am still learning, which is really important.
Thank you. I love the specificity of the 3 to 5 years. I think there is something to keeping track of time because otherwise it can get away from you. Exactly. Jennifer, what about you? How did you know if you've made career moves that it was the right time?
Yeah, so as I had mentioned, I've been at Janssen for 20 years, but my role has significantly changed over those 20 years. And I also like Sharon's 3 to 5 year assessments and knowing maybe what your next step is in the next 3 to 5 years. And even if you don't know exactly what it is, using your network, your mentors, look at what's out there outside your job. I mean, I continually look at what the opportunities are outside, not because I want to leave, but because I want to know how to craft my role that I currently have into what excites me and continue learning. The one example that I'll give is, even just a couple of years ago, I had been a project leader for many years, leading medicinal chemistry programs and a part of Janssen's research efforts for many years, but became really interested in a novel area of technology that was coming along within the field of small molecule drug discovery. And I started to look outside at other companies. We weren't doing it internally. I started to look outside at what was going on in the field, what was happening, and educate myself. And then I brought that education into Janssen. I started giving seminars in the area. Is this something we want to go into? Talking with experts around our company, along my network, in different areas to see, is this something we want to enter into? Here are the pros and cons. This is what it will add. And by, doing that, which it's another example of self-promotion, but by bringing that in and educating myself and then reaching out to educate others and learn from others, I was able to craft that role and bring that technology into Janssen because I created this network and interest around that area. So that helped me transition into a new role where I kind of set myself apart as being a leader in that role and bringing it in, but still, reaching out to others to expand my network and try and grow, our knowledge internally at Janssen. That's one example of trying to prepare for something new, but found using a passion to drive that change.
Yeah, that's great. And last but not least, Stacey, how did you go about identifying the next best opportunity for you when you?
And I'd say very similar to what Sharon and Jennifer said. For me, I'm a really big believer in a cycle of success within your career, right? So it's a lot of what both of these wonderful ladies both spoke to as well. I'll say two kind of tangible signs for me when I feel like, okay, and by the way, I'm in the same camp of 3 to 5 years as well. My most of my career has been in that range for each role. But I would say two signs for me where I know it's probably time for me to start thinking about other things is one, I start to become very comfortable, right? And two, that ambiguity within a new role or even as you're learning, it starts to become less scary. And so for me, I know that's a sign that I'm ready for the next challenge. I'm ready to take it to whatever the next opportunity is. But what's really important to me is that with that, I've created value for myself in that role, but also the company, right? And in terms of going about looking for the next role, again, similar to what both Sharon and Jennifer said, it's networking. And, even at the start of a new role, I'm always assessing what else is out there, what opportunities exist within the organization or outside of the organization, right? Where do I have interest and where do I not know a lot? And perhaps I can dig a little deeper to learn more about different functions, different areas of the business. And that has always led me to the next opportunity when I'm ready.
Great. So you all just talked about how you looked at change for yourselves. And this is a moment in the labor market where a lot of people have made changes recently or contemplating changes, particularly women. Thankfully, we're off the lows of women's labor force participation rates that the pandemic really hurt. As managers of people and teams in your careers, I'm sure you've seen a lot of people try to change their role. And as managers, what advice would you give somebody listening today about how to discuss like trying to change their job or their role? And what's the best way to approach your manager when talking about career goals? Jennifer, why don't you start? Yeah,
sure. I can jump in on that. I think one of the most important things that I've learned is that you do have to own your own career, and you do have to be willing to put out there to your manager what your interests are. Managers are not mind readers. Not all managers are created equal. So I guess I'll have two parts to the advice. Share what you want to do, share specific examples. Definitely look around at what other people are doing, your peers, and also what that next role looks like. And express whether you have interest in those types of activities. How do you grow towards those if you're not there yet? So I would say be very open with your manager. I know not every manager is created equal, so I think it's important for people to not only have discussions with their manager, but also to have a mentor or a sponsor or someone else, either within your function or outside your function, that you can discuss opportunities with. And even how to approach if you don't feel like your manager is going to be responsive. What are other ways in the company to gain some information and how to set yourself up for that next role. But it is important to own your own career and be able to, I would not expect your manager to always bring every opportunity to you, but if you tell them what opportunities you want and what excites you and what you feel like you need to work in, then they know what to bring to you. So.
Right, there's a much better chance they'll remember. Stacey, what advice do you have?
Yeah, I couldn't agree more with Jennifer, and actually a lot of my thinking here is very similar. So I think the most important piece is openly share your interests with manager, agree on having a mentor or sponsor. You know, once people know, I would say generally they seek to help, right? And make things happen for you. You know, I mentioned I'm a great example of making that career switch. And in my case, I did express interest at the time I was in R&D. Very interested in manufacturing, and I expressed that, and my boss at the time gave me the opportunity. I was still in R&D, but I played an R&D role for a manufacturing site, which really opened the door to educating me about that aspect of supply chain, and then exposing me to a lot of folks there. So be transparent. And then the other piece I would add is, again, like Jennifer said, is you own your own career. So I would encourage you to really put the effort in, right? Managers, mentors are vehicles that will help support and help get you visibility, but ultimately you're the one that really needs to seek out those opportunities. And I'll say, more importantly, where I sometimes see folks fall short here is follow up on opportunities, right? Very often you may connect or network with someone, express interest, but then I see people kind of trail off and not follow up, or perhaps not come back and express, okay, you know, they did their homework, or they had further conversations. I think that's really important because it continues to show your interest, and I think helps get you on the path.
Great. Sharon, what about you?
Yeah, and first of all, I apologize. The light was going off here. All of a sudden, everything started to go dark. But you know, I think Jennifer and Stacey said it very nicely. I mean, we all own our development, and you have to take that and take it seriously, right? And be open and honest with your managers, because they can help, right? Really focusing in on a development plan, really focusing in on getting out there and understanding what could be, right, a next step, and what could be of interest is very important. Sometimes even taking a little bit of a stretch assignment, right, a little bit of a challenge, even in a current role that may outreach to another group to learn a little bit about it first, to see if that is something that really is the next direction for you. You know, I learned that a bit because I always thought I was going to be in R&D my entire career. I love R&D. And I took a little bit of a stretch because in the commercial space, you know, it was a new organization that was growing. And, you know, it kind of sparked a little bit of interest to me. But, you know, so I said, And I took an opportunity to be a part of a team that was working very closely with commercial, still in my role I had. And I worked with my manager, and she was very supportive of that, right? And that also helped me. That's now the role that I'm in right now. She knew, right, of my interest. She also helped me, right, to get a bit of a stretch assignment, if you will. And then when the role came open, she put my name right out there. So I think it's, you know, again, it's the being that transparent, having some transparent conversations, having the mentor, having a sponsor for yourself, and then taking a little bit of chances and little stretch assignments to help learn more.
I love that. And clearly this advice has served you all well. You know, we talked a little bit at the beginning of this conversation about self-promotion, and then we talked about, you know, owning your career development. But at this point, after a couple of years of remote or hybrid work for many people, it's becoming potentially more difficult than ever to make the connections and be seen, because we're having a lot of virtual meetings and may not have the FaceTime or the same kinds of serendipitous, you know, water cooler meetings and conversations that may help make it easier to make ourselves known and our work known. Do you think that do you have any advice or specific suggestions for how to make yourself more visible, particularly in a virtual or hybrid work environment? Stacey, why don't you start?
Sure. I would again kind of go back to the transparency theme. I think it's really important that your manager understand that you are looking to get broader exposure, right? And perhaps get those opportunities maybe beyond your immediate space. Don't shy away from asking to be involved or asking to join something, an opportunity. It can be a business need, it can be a employee resource group. Really seek out those opportunities or agree to take them on when you're approached, right? I think imposter syndrome plays a big role there sometimes. For women in particular, when you're asked to take on something that could be a high visibility or something that's really critical, right? Is we shy away. Can I do it? And am I capable? So, in my example, I was able to really secure this leadership development role I'm in by not shying away from those tough or ambiguous opportunities. And I'll say many of them were during COVID, right? While we were all remote. So I find I tend to run headfirst into those types of, they could be fires that, well, in the sense of saying fires, not real fires, but running into those types of opportunities. I think that is ultimately what helped me get exposure and be considered for where I am now. And then the last piece I would say is, you can't just jump early in your career. It may not be ideal to jump right into the high visibility items. So really think about understanding the path to getting there, right? Be patient, prepare yourself. So, perhaps you kind of take small bites at getting visibility. Maybe it's at a staff meeting you're presenting. Maybe it's, leadership of a co-op or an intern, and really kind of building up that muscle to where you do then have the opportunity to jump in and you have the confidence behind you as well.
Great. Jennifer?
Yeah, I liked what Stacey just said about, taking even small opportunities to, bring your work out there and get your work known. Working virtually has been really challenging. I am an extrovert. I like to connect with people. The constant, Zoom after Zoom after Zoom, and we're really just focused on work. You lose those touch points of knowing who people are. And as a manager, I feel like one of the things that brings my team together is getting to know people and their daily lives, and just having a little bit of that connection that's not solely work based, to know what's happening that may influence who you give work to in terms of how people are doing and how are they struggling, do they need more. So even though we're virtual, I know it's hard to be accessible all the time, but do use those. If you are only virtual, do use those chat functions. Do reach out and not wait for a meeting to express your opinions, and get still that one-on-one connection if you can, and say, hey, I heard this, can we just talk about this for a minute? It's really important to still make that effort and have that connection, even if it's, a peer or a direct report, or it's, a manager. You really still need to make those touch points. Even if you're working virtually, if you have the opportunity to do any face-to-face, even if it's just, once a month or once every couple months, to make that connection, especially with new teams. I think that's where people struggle, is when you start with a new team and it's all virtual. And we have been amazing at doing this over the past couple of years. We can do our jobs this way, but if you have the opportunity to meet someone face to face and have that coffee and get that downtime where you're just not focused on what the task is at hand on Zoom, I still think it's really important for your network, for your career, for understanding what's going on and advancing whatever it is, that you're doing, faster, if you're able to have that connection with someone. So, still reaching out in any way possible to have those personal connections is important.
Thanks, Jennifer. What about you, Sharon?
I think Jennifer and Stacey again said it very nicely, right? I think it's making the effort, right? Taking the opportunities, not being afraid to take the opportunities. Even if it's all still virtual, if there are meetings that you're in and there's an individual or a leader that the conversation and the discussion sparks an interest, is to reach out, right? To reach out, and even if it's again virtual, coffee chat with individuals, or follow up, take the opportunities, as I think Stacey, you might have said it, to, do a presentation if there's an area of interest that you have expertise in. Make yourself visible, take the opportunity and make the connections with individuals who are either running the meeting, leading the teams, and raise your hand, right? And again, it doesn't have to be something big, because, really the focus and the small chunks sometimes do add up, right, to getting you to, bigger opportunities for the future. So.
Can I add one more thing onto what Sharon just said? The raise your hand. I mean, Zoom is an amazing platform, or Teams, whatever it is that you use, to have those individual chats behind the scene, and it can be less scary to express your opinion and ask a question when there's a long chat going on and gets your name out there. So do use those opportunities to directly connect with someone even during a meeting, or ask a question where it may feel less scary. To type it in versus say it. It is a nice way to still get your name out there and engage in the conversation.
Absolutely. So you have all given advice from the perspective of being managers, from developing your own careers. Now I want to kind of turn to specifically women who are interested in taking on leadership roles. Do you have any other advice? I mean, I'm sure many of the things that you've spoken about apply into moving into leadership, but is there anything specific about leadership roles that, when you reflect on the difference between progression from, early in your career to mid-level roles to now where you are, that you would give advice to other women about? Sharon, let's start with you now.
Yeah, I will always use this, because the best bit of advice I ever received was from my next door neighbor when I took my first people manager role. And he said to me, Sharon, surround yourself with people who know what they're doing, because you can't know everything and you can't do everything. And that bit of advice has helped me through my entire career, no matter what leadership level, and even advancing in leadership, that has served me so well.
Interesting and unconventional. I love it. Jennifer, what about you?
I think that was a great one, Sharon. Maybe this one is more conventional, but I feel like I've learned that there is not one way to lead, and you don't need to emulate other leaders out there, whether they're male or female. You don't need to emulate them. You got this role leading because you deserve it. And because of who you are and how you are approaching, your job. So I would lean into that, lean into who you are, and have that, you fake it till you make it if you need to, that confidence that you can lead and that you're given this role because of how you are going to go about it.
That's great. And Stacey?
Yeah, I think both Sharon and Jennifer, perfect advice there, and I'll build off of Jennifer's, because that was really what I was going to say as well. Is I'll be brief, that you are where you are for a reason. Trust in that, and trust in yourself.
Great. Pearls of wisdom. And so we talked already a lot about your advice, but would you say that there's one thing that's been the most valuable lesson that you've learned, maybe the hard way, or maybe through a misstep, or it doesn't have to be, but is there one sort of valuable lesson that you'd like to share with everyone listening in today? Start with you, Jennifer.
I think we already covered that your network is important.
Yeah.
An old boss of mine used to say your network is your net worth. And so I still like to reiterate that. But maybe a lesson learned is get back to people. As you obtain these roles as a leader, your inbox is gonna fill up. You're gonna have more and more people reaching out to you for different things, and it is very hard to filter, on how to do that, but it is really important to get back to people. People want to hear from you, and you continue to expand that network by reaching out to folks. Don't let something sit that is important. That's an important connection, for 2 weeks. That's a lesson learned where I've gotten too busy and I haven't gotten back to people, and then you either didn't make an impact in an area where they really needed your opinion, or potentially they stopped reaching out to you when it could have been an important area for you to continue to work in. And so try the best you can to do that.
Great. Stacey?
Yeah, so my biggest lesson learned, I'll say, has been and continues to be really about myself and my abilities. I've mentioned there's some big leaps I've taken in my career, right? Switching companies, switching careers. I've taken roles that didn't exist before I had them, and I really had to shape and create what that is. And in all of these examples, I really am incredibly proud that I've been able to successfully navigate that change, and really teach myself as I went, right? And be able to operate in those new and challenging spaces. And as I said in the previous question, you're here for a reason. And I've learned that I was afforded each one of the opportunities, these challenging opportunities in my career, for a reason. And that really is because I'm capable of anything, right? That I put my mind to, that I put my heart to. And remember that about yourself, because it's sometimes we forget it in the mix of our crazy days and our crazy lives. You're capable of accomplishing anything you set your mind out to.
I love that. Sharon?
Yeah, maybe just add on to that again, believe in yourself, right? There will be times where you'll make mistakes, right? I've made mistakes, and at first it was very horrific, right, for me. But I learned from those mistakes, and each one of those mistakes and the learnings has helped to take me even further, right, in my career. So it's believing in yourself. Don't be really hard on yourself, when things don't go right, but learn from those mistakes and take that and continue moving forward.
Great. You've also shared so much wisdom, and now I'm going to turn to some questions that I see in the chat. Oh, I know who to ask this to. Well, there is a specific question for you, Stacey, about believing in yourself and knowing that you're capable obviously helped you in taking a new role in a new company. Was there anything else beyond that self-confidence that you might give? Somebody anonymously asked this question in terms of pivoting to something new.
In terms of kind of what else I leveraged to really get me to that new place. Yeah, the network, sponsors as well, right? And a lot of that is built up over time. Sponsors for sure built up over time, right? Based on observing you and seeing you in action. And so really it's your ability to show others what you're capable of, to know, to have the confidence in yourself, but then 3, then for those people around you to kind of help and advocate on your behalf as well. So I think it all kind of comes together and really helps get you to that next place or new place or whatever it may be.
Great. Actually, the next question, someone named Faith is asking, what is a good way to grow your network? We talked about the importance of that network and equaling net worth. Jennifer, do you want to take that? I think it was you who said that.
I think we talked a little bit about, reaching out and finding, part of it is making yourself known in the area that you're working in, and so that you can make those connections. And exercise that, maybe this is going to a little bit more in corporate, and some of the leadership courses that I've taken is making a stakeholder map. and looking at who are my stakeholders, who do I need to connect with to achieve my goals, who is knowledgeable in XYZ area. And once you have that stakeholder map, do you actually know those people or not? And if you don't, those are the people that maybe you either need to build closer relationships to, reach out for a meeting. I'd like to talk about this upcoming event. I want to hear more about it. People like being reached out to and asked about their expertise. And so that is one tool that's helped me recognize, especially when I move into a new role, as I have, recently, who are the people that I need to know and learn from in order to be successful. And then by writing it down, that gives you a tangible, trajectory for how to tackle that in kind of a short term.
Yeah, I love the stakeholder map.
And maybe just to add to that too, Jennifer, because as you have that stakeholder map, right, and you connect out with individuals, then they start to get to know you and your interests. They'll connect you to even more people, right? And then that's really how it grows.
And I'll add one last thing is you can make it something so simple as saying, I'm going to connect with one new person every month, right? Or 2 new people. If you set a goal for yourself around how many, perhaps, that really helps drive it as well.
Great. I've also found that's, you're right. Just making a small goal is an important way to keep yourself accountable for progress. And then also sometimes I found that you just need to keep up with the people that you've already made that initial contact with and remind them, oh, here's a new update. I've started a new role, or I'm interested in this now, so that they're aware, because they need to be informed after you've already invested time in developing the stakeholders. There's a question that I think is interesting as you all have some management experience. When you think about leading your teams, how do you encourage productivity? How do you hold people accountable? What sort of management philosophies do you have that might be helpful to someone who's a newer manager listening in?
I'll start there. So I would say one, usually if you're a new manager, perhaps coming into a space, the folks on your team, right, are probably going to have more of an understanding or knowledge base on that particular role, right? So I think it's really important, one, to listen to your team and hear them. I think it's incredibly important. And I would say with that, also empowering your team to make decisions, to provide insights, right? I think that gives folks a really a sense of comfort with their management and engages in this more open, more transparent relationship, right? I think it builds more trust. So I think those are 2 simple ways to come in as a new manager and really rely on a team of experts that are likely already there and in place.
Yeah. I really liked what you just said, Stacey. I think the accountable and the empowering your team is really important. So as a new manager, I can imagine a scenario where you could be, you're wanting to get a task done and you have the new team, not really connected with them yet. And I've seen people swoop in and take care of things that their team was supposed to be empowered to do. And I see that as, you don't build that trust and that engagement where they're going to get people will make mistakes, and you have to, let them make mistakes and then help bring them up on how to do it differently the next time. And that's okay. And as a new manager, sometimes it's a little more uncomfortable to see that happening, but it really will build the trust within your team. The other is clear goals. I think if you have clear goals and expectations of what those people's roles are and how to work within the context of the team, that's really helpful. And you can always go back to it when folks start to stray, away from maybe what the team goal was. And so I find that if people have clear roles, then they can come together more to achieve what they're setting out to.
Yeah. And maybe I'll just add just a little bit more. I mean, when you become a new manager, right, it's what's difficult is you've been such a technical expert, right, in what you do, that now as you become the manager and you actually expand in leadership, you actually will have less technical knowledge that you use every day. And it's those individuals that report to you, right, that have that technical experience. So it is, I like what you said, Stacey, you know, coming in new, listen, right? Listen to people, understand the type of team members that you have, understand their experience, learn how to empower them, but to be there for them from a support perspective. And, you know, when mistakes are made, is to sit down and work through it, right? So not take it on, not swoop in, as Jennifer, I think you said that too very nicely, but it's to start to let that technical go and to start to allow empowerment and trust to begin.
I'll add one more thought. Sorry, it came to
great.
me as I was listening to Jennifer and Sharon. Build a culture that people want to be part of, I think, is the other piece. And really, you know, it's okay to have fun with your team, right? It doesn't have to be this serious relationship. Like, have fun, and really, I think that goes a long way in establishing a team dynamic.
Yeah, I was gonna add something to that effect, Stacey. Even in the goal setting, I like to involve my team so that everyone is invested and that everyone understands that they have that we're all in it together. And so if you come up with those, you know, what you're trying to achieve together, then that brings it together more, and you can have fun with it when doing those types of exercises.
This is all great. Sharon, you mentioned, you know, being very technical, focused on R&D. This is a panel sponsored by the We STEM 2D group, and we haven't talked a lot about technical and STEM careers. Maybe we could just end on that note. I mean, can you all share how you focus? We have patent holders on this panel. How can we? What advice would you give to somebody about how to invest in your technical expertise? Did you pursue training, certificates? How did you develop your technical chops in your career? Stacey, do you want to take it?
Yes, I'm trying to remember back to to the scientist in me. I would say, you know, my story is probably more less exciting in the sense of, you know, I didn't go for special trainings. You know, my degree is in chemistry, so obviously schooling. But then it really, a lot of it for me was on the job training, and a big piece of it was early in my career, I was co-located with a manufacturing site, so I was able to see directly how what I was doing was impacting on a broader scale, right? And decisions I was making in a lab, what that looked like as things started to scale. So I would say that the job itself is really what taught me, no additional trainings or anything beyond that, but on the job training.
Yeah, great. You know, Stacey, I think, you know, because I was also trying to think back, right, on this. And as you were talking, I remember in my career when I had an individual reporting into me, and she said, Sharon, I see people are getting promoted to the next level, like quickly. How do I get promoted? What type of training do I need to take, right, to get promoted? And I said to her, it's not about the training, right? The training is one aspect, but it is that on-the-job training. It is that going through and experiencing projects, experiencing issues, and experiencing challenges, and how together to solve for situations. It's that learning, you know, those experiences that really help you to learn. And I think as we've been talking here, right, and looking at different avenues and different moving in different directions in your career, each time you learn more, right? From that position, that just continues, you know, to take you further. So it is very interesting just to kind of think of it as just a different way from just the training and education.
Yeah, I don't think I could say it any better. I think the most that I've ever learned wasn't coming from the training. It was from solving problems on the job and working with others to solve those problems. And, you know, working with my manager, other folks on a project to really understand the whole issue and how my piece was impacting it. there's just no better training than that. I guess one other piece would be where you are, focus on really making a good impact on in the role that you're given. Sometimes you tend to be like, oh, that project's better, or that person has this role, and really, focusing and doing a good job, in making clear decisions for what you're doing, and learning is taking as much from it as possible is how you're going to grow.
Okay, great. We're going to end on a high note by talking about something you each are proud of, particularly proud of. It could be personal, it could be professional. You've talked each a little bit about things that you are rightly proud of, but if there's anything else that you haven't shared, Sharon, do you have anything that comes to mind?
I think, just one thing that initially came to mind is, I was able to develop one of my person reporting into me, giving her the experience of understanding, what she wanted from her next role, working with her in her development plan, and then seeing her actually get promoted to that next level. So I think, we probably have many examples like that, but I think that's really helping grow my people, and then seeing them expand to next levels that takes their career even further.
Right, very rewarding. Stacey?
I love that. Seeing your team or folks blossom and really develop, and knowing that you helped support that, it feels incredibly wonderful. So I totally agree, Sharon. I will say, I'm going to say, for me, I'm proud of being a mom of 2 young boys, by the way, which are a lot of energy. Being a wife, being a career woman, and being able to somehow balance it all, right? Some days I don't know how I do it, but at the end of the day, I do, and I'm incredibly proud of that. And yeah, I have nothing else to say on that.
No, it's huge. I have 3 little kids, and I understand it's very hard certain days. Jennifer, last but not least.
Those are my 2 examples, Sharon and Stacey, and so I think just that speaks to what kind of drives us, as leaders. It's not necessarily our own accomplishments, but being able to be a part of others' accomplishments, and so developing a team and seeing them deliver or grow into the roles. I've had several people underneath me that I've been able to transition into new roles, and seeing them develop and learn, take the skills that they learn and apply it in an area that gets them excited and gives them passion has been really, really important to me throughout my career. And personally, for the past few months, just picking up my daughter from school and being able to spend that time with her in the car, even, and in between Zooms, and being able to have that little bit of flexibility with work has really made me more fulfilled. And so I've really enjoyed being able to try and get that balance that Stacey was talking about. It is hard to achieve, and when you do it right, you get everything from work and personal, and it's worth striving for.
Well, Stacey, Jennifer, and Sharon, thank you so much for sharing about your careers, your insights. It was very inspiring, and thank you everyone for joining us. Please check out Johnson & Johnson's page on Fairygodboss. They have amazing open roles in STEM and beyond, and look forward to sending you this recording for anybody who may have missed a few parts of. You don't want to miss a single minute, I promise you. Thank you to everyone. Have a wonderful rest of your day.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.